We have stories on every topic in every conceivable time period, from ancient philosophy, the story of Zhuangzi and the happiness of fish, to the story of a modern scientist, Yuan Longping, who through his painstaking research into strains of rice brought about a massive improvement to global food supply. His journey began in the 1960s and continues to the present day. We also have a story about an ancient Chinese inventor, Cai Lun, and a story about friendship and sacrifice from the Warring States period, Zuo Tao and Yang Jiaoai. We also have a story about the architect who designed the Forbidden City. All of these stories will be divided into classes which will teach you about recitation, summarizing, English vocabulary, grammar and word usage, storytelling techniques, and also how to apply the themes and ideas behind these stories to modern society. 故事涵盖不同的主题，发生在不同的时期，有关于古代哲学的庄子与之乐的故事，到现代科学家袁隆平的故事。值得一提的是，袁隆平的故事开始的时间是20世纪60年代，并且在今天依然有影响力。在蔡伦的故事中，我们可以了解一位古代的发明家；在左伯涛和杨角爱的故事中，我们会学习到在战国时期为朋友奉献的故事。也有关于故宫建筑师的故事。在学习故事的过程中，你会有多种能力的提升，包括朗诵、故事概括能力、英语词汇量、语法、语言应用和讲故事技巧等等。我们也会教大家如何将故事的主题和思想结合到现代社会当中。课程马上就开始了。大家好，外国人经常会听到中国的4大发明，但是却对蔡伦的造纸术背后的故事知之甚少。这个故事很有层次感，可以把探索的现实的几个必要的步骤展现得十分清晰。首先，我们能从中看到蔡伦是怎么样应对当下的问题，就是他想找又轻便又廉价的载体来记录文字。可以说，这个就是向探索迈出的第一步。发现问题，提出问题，一旦完成了第一步，你的思想便开始活跃起来，寻找解决方案。在之后的故事里，这种思维方式就让蔡伦从河里漂着的一块烂树皮上找到了灵感。这个故事非常值得分享给外国人听，因为它有助于打消外国人对古代中国人的一种比较糟糕的成见。在某些西方人的眼中，中国古代通常是死读儒家学说的盲从者，而这个故事则明确地告诉外国人，中国古人对发明的创新同样充满热情，而且还擅长使用科学手段和实验方法来探索新鲜的事物。Okay, now I'm going to read the whole of the English text. An excursion leads to an accidental discovery. When talking about papermaking, one cannot fail to mention Cai Lun. Cai Lun lived during the Han Dynasty some 2,000 years ago. Before his time, people had used natural materials such as tortoise shells, animal bones, bamboo slats, pieces of wood, or expensive silk to write on. Apart from their high costs, these things were not easy to carry around or to store, and so could not be widely used. Cai Lun was an official of the imperial court who had opportunities of access to the emperor himself. He noticed that the emperor had to read piles of memorials written on bamboo slats and wooden blocks every day. They were heavy and awkward to read, leading Cai Lun to ponder how much better it would be to have some lighter and more convenient writing material. At that time, the technique of Raising silkworms and making silk had already been mastered. Moreover, the flimsy fabric left over from the silk-making process was dried in the sun and used to make silk paper. However, because it was scarce and expensive, silk paper could not be widely used. Cai Luan wanted to make paper from material readily available and inexpensive. But what material apart from silk could be used? This problem occupied Cai Luan's mind for a long time. One day, on an excursion outside the capital city, Cai Luan and some colleagues came to a riverbank. The scenery was delightful, and the others were in high spirits. Cai Luan, however, was preoccupied in his mind. Suddenly, something in the river caught his eye. He fished it out of the water and began to examine it carefully. Thinking that he had found a jewel, Cai Luan's colleagues crowded round him. When they looked carefully, they saw that what Cai Luan had in his hands was a piece of soaking cotton fibre, dirty and decomposed, evidently a piece of refuse. But Cai Luan was excited. "I found it! I found it!" he exclaimed. His colleagues didn't understand what he meant. They thought that Cai Luan had gone off his head. Holding his discovery in both hands, Cai Luan asked a local peasant, "Sir, how did this stuff get to be like this?" The peasant replied, "It is tree bark which has floated in the water, or perhaps rotted flax or a bit of broken fishing net. They get washed and steeped in the water and dried in the sun. Over time they decompose into that stuff. It can be found all over the place." Excited, Cai Luan hurried back to the palace and straight away started experimenting. He chopped up pieces of tree bark, sodden flax, rags and scraps of fishing nets and steeped them in a pond. After a period of time, when they had all formed a stable, pulpy mass, he fished it out and pounded it in a stone mortar into a paste. He then tipped this paste into another pond. He separated the layers of pulp by scooping them up on bamboo screens. When they had dried, the layers became the first proper forms of paper. Following continuous improvements, paper became stronger and more attractive. The emperor was delighted and enfeoffed Cai Luan as Lord of Longting. Thereafter, people began to call paper Lord Cai's paper. Paper gradually replaced bamboo and silk as the medium for writing and painting. Paper was one of the 4 great inventions of ancient China. It helped the development of human history. Its role in transmitting knowledge and culture is irreplaceable. The moral of this story. The art of paper making was one of the 4 great inventions of ancient China. Its role in the development of world civilization proved decisive. The invention and improvement of paper-making technique best illustrate how good the Chinese people are at exploring and refining things. The art of paper-making is a result of the Chinese people's persistent exploration, and Cai Luan is an outstanding representative of them in terms of persistent exploration. Okay, you've all heard me reading now the story from beginning to end. Now, in this part of the class, what we're going to be doing is practicing some recitation skills. That is, I'll be giving you some tips about how you can make your spoken English, your spoken voice, more lively, more interesting, more engaging, how you can convey the meaning of a story, the sense of a story to your audience. 好的，大家刚才已经听我把整个故事的英文版本从头到底朗诵了一下。那么现在我们要练习一些诵读技巧，学会怎么样去让我们的声音有更多的代入感。那么在今天的课，我们特别要强调的一个技巧就是停顿。我们如何用停顿来提高听众和观众的一种悬疑感，或者说我们如何可以创造一种悬疑感，通过停顿。也可以说怎么样去创造一种临场感，通过停顿。那么在诵读我们说到停顿的时候，我们其实说的是标点符号之外的停顿， 当然，一般情况遇到一个逗号或者遇到一个句号，肯定是要停顿。但是我们诵读的时候，我们有时候会故意在句子的中间停顿一下。但是我们每一次做这样的一个停顿，肯定是我们要创造一种效果，或者我们要传播出去一种感觉。So, when we're talking about pausing in a recitation class, what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're talking about pausing between sentences, because obviously at the end of a sentence or at a comma, you're always going to be pausing, but occasionally you want to pause in the middle of a sentence. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, often it's to create a sense of suspense or a sense of anticipation, or sometimes to indicate a change in mood. But usually it's to create a sense of anticipation. We want to keep the audience waiting for that next word. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing now is reading the passage in English again, a particular passage from the story that I just recited. And as I read it, I want everyone to listen carefully for where I pause. And secondly, I want everyone to think about why it is that I'm pausing at that moment. What effect am I trying to create, and why did I choose that moment to pause? 好的，现在我想从我们哪个英文版本的故事拿一个节选，然后重新诵读那个节选。然后我诵读这个节选的时候，大家可以注意到我在哪里停顿了。但是我说停顿了，当然是在句子中间哪里停顿了。这是第一点。第二点是，你如果找到了我在哪里做了一个比较夸张的一个停顿，我希望大家也可以思考一下，我为什么会选择在这个地方，在这个时刻去做这么一个停顿。好，大家来听一听。Thinking that he had found a jewel, Cylon's colleagues crowded round him. When they looked carefully, they saw that what Cylon had in his hands was a piece of soaking cotton fibre, dirty and decomposed, evidently a piece of refuse. But Cylon was excited. "I found it! I found it!" he exclaimed. His colleagues didn't understand what he meant. They thought that Cylon had gone off his head. 好的，大家有没有听得出来我在哪里停顿了？如果大家仔细听了，你肯定听到了，我是在描述他在手里拿着一个东西那一块儿。然后我读了这句话 ：When they looked carefully, they saw that what Cylon had in his hands. 然后我停顿了。为什么呢？因为我想让听众等一等，到底他拿着什么东西？我要提高这种悬疑感。还有另外一个目标，在那个停顿之前，我带着一种比较兴奋的一种语气。为什么呢？因为他们都很兴奋，他以为他找到了一个什么宝贵的东西，也许是一个什么宝石，一个 jewel。但是停顿之后，我就带着一种有 disgusted 的一种感觉，这是一个像一块垃圾一样，所以这个停顿也是代表一个情绪到另外一个情绪的一个转变。好的，我们再来听一听那句话 Cylon's colleagues crowded round him. When they looked carefully, they saw that what Cylon had in his hands was a piece of soaking cotton fibre, dirty and decomposed, evidently a piece of refuse. 所以这个停顿实际上有两个作用，一个是提高这个悬疑感，我们要知道他手里有什么东西，那你让你的听众等一等，你一旦停顿，他们的注意力会集中起来。是什么？是什么？这是第一个效果。第二个效果是，我们要给我们自己做一些准备，从一个兴奋的一种感觉，转移到一种disgusted 或者失望的一种感觉。所以那种兴奋和失望的对比，我们那个停顿也是帮助我们去创造或者强调这种对比。Okay, we're going to now listen to the whole passage again, right from the very beginning. 好，我们现在来把整个节选再听一听。Thinking that he had found a jewel, Cai Lun's colleagues crowded round him. When they looked carefully, they saw that what Cai Lun had in his hands was a piece of soaking cotton fibre, dirty and decomposed, evidently a piece of refuse. But Cai Lun was excited. "I found it! I found it!" he exclaimed. His colleagues didn't understand what he meant. They thought that Cai Lun had gone off his head. Okay, so what I hope everyone will do at home is to practice that kind of pausing. It's something that you can use when you're reciting, but it also displays a great confidence in your ability to express yourself in English. I often say that when someone is making a speech on the stage, the way you can know whether they are confident or not is whether they are confident enough to pause in front of the audience and not say some words. Usually when someone is nervous, they constantly talk and fill in every blank moment of time with words and sound. 好的，今天的课就讲到这里了。That's it from me. Bye for now.